Qualcomm, they're like this, still relatively small San Diego, technology startup. They can't do all this stuff. So they do start signing some partnerships with both base station infrastructure providers and handset makers. They signed Nokia, big win, big European manufacturer as a partner. But they realize, to do this whole solution, like specifically, there's kind of 4 parts to making a CDMA wireless network work. You need the core IP and technology that we've talked about. Qualcomm's got that for sure. You need the infrastructure, the CDMA, like base stations that go on the towers, all that, like the back ends, the switching, all that. You need that infrastructure. It needs to be CDMA. The old stuff's not going to work with it. The TDMA stuff's not going to work with it. You need the handsets for consumers to work. Same deal. It's got to be CDMA. And then probably most importantly, in order to make those 2 sets of infrastructure work, you need the silicon, the semiconductors that go into them.
Yep.
And so somebody's got to do all 4 of those things. Like all 4 of those things need to happen. Qualcomm's for sure got number 1 covered. The question is, who's going to do 2, 3, and 4? Qualcomm's like, they start signing partners, but they're like, we really need to spur adoption. I think we kind of got to do everything ourselves.
We need to offer the complete solution.
The complete solution. And this is a major undertaking. This is why they raise all this money in the public markets. Qualcomm today is the largest fabless semiconductor company in the world.
Isn't that crazy? Bigger than NVIDIA.
Bigger than NVIDIA. And they don't make handsets and they don't make infrastructure.
I think.
Bigger
than Apple.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of numbers of orders they're placing with chip foundries, Qualcomm is the biggest.
Yeah.
So
how do you get from there to here?
So they did need to run this really interesting playbook where even though it wasn't going to be the thing that they necessarily did long term, in order to get their solution adopted, they had to do it in the moment.
Bootstrap it up. So they do another just brilliant move. They create 2 joint ventures. I believe both of them, I know the handset one, but I believe both were 51% owned by Qualcomm, 49% owned by the partner. On the infrastructure side, they partner with Nortel, to do a JV to manufacture CDMA base station equipment. And then, in another wonderful acquired full circle moment,
they call up our friends in Japan.
They call up our friends in Japan, who at the time, their US manufacturing headquarters was based in San Diego.
That's convenient.
California. Very convenient. Our friends
at Sony.
I guess Akio Morita was running it.
Yeah.
At that point in time.
Yep.
The Sony Corporation to partner in a JV to make handsets.
But they're doing all this to be able to answer yes when a carrier is coming to them and saying, well, great, we'll be CDMA, but question mark. Qualcomm's like, yep, and yep, we make all that stuff.
Yep.
You should feel safe adopting us.
It was equally crazy and like future seeing to know that fabless was a thing, that foundries were a thing, to be willing to work with foundries.
Yep.
And Qualcomm did it.
It's like, how many times is this company going to be in the right place at the right time and know it?
Just to paint the punchline here. Today, Qualcomm's total revenue is close to 40 billion annually, I think, of which 85% is their semiconductor business.
Yep.
So without
37 billion of their 44 billion of revenue is selling.
So, but for this strategic decision, 85% of today's Qualcomm revenue would not exist. And they are the largest fabless semiconductor company in the world, bigger than NVIDIA, who's number 2.
Crazy.
Totally crazy. It makes sense. They started a couple years before NVIDIA. So, compounding, it's a thing.
That's right.
57% market share in the US in 2G, 100% market share in countries like South Korea. They end up getting, I should know this, either 100% massive market share in China, which is adopting, mobile cell video for the first time. And this is so much. So the first 1995 is the first year that these networks go live in the US and internationally. Qualcomm does $383 million in revenue in 1995. In 1996, they do $814 million in revenue. Oh my gosh.
So a few interesting things happen in 99. One, Qualcomm starts to realize it's a pretty serious drag on our business to have this super capital intensive manufacturing operations. We're funneling all this money that could be free cash flow for the business or could let us reinvest in new R&D into making phones and making base stations. We got to do something about this. So in March of 99, they sell their infrastructure business, the base stations, to Ericsson, which was formerly one of their competitors.
They're a big competitor.
They're
It was part of a licensing deal of all the settlement deal of all the lawsuits that popped up between the two companies along the way. They're like, "Oh, great, we'll sell you our manufacturing division."
This is basically them looking and saying, "I don't think we need that to bootstrap our strategy anymore. I think at this point, we've got enough momentum that we don't need to make our own base stations. We don't need to make our own cell phones." So 1,000 of the 9,500 Qualcomm employees become Ericsson employees. Then they look over at their mobile phone business. I mean, over the next 18 months, the stock would basically be Tesla stock. Like that's this crazy moment that we're about to talk about. December 1999, Kyocera buys Qualcomm's mobile phone business. So they now officially just sell chips that they call QTC, the Qualcomm CDMA Technologies Group. And then they've got a second group, QTL, which is Qualcomm Technology Licensing.
It's so just
the business model is now set. They make silicon, they make IP licenses, they sell very high margin revenue licenses to their patent war chest. That's the business model for the future. They no longer have this drag on them.
And they sell relatively high margin semiconductor designs because they don't fab any of the semis.
And when they're selling these designs, they're not just saying, "Here's a chip, give me $5 for it." They're saying, "How much you sell those phones for? Yeah, we'll take 5% of that." And you say, "What? What if I want to raise prices on my phones?" And Qualcomm says, "Yep, you'll still pay us 5% of that." And you're like, "What do you mean? I'll just go somewhere else." And they're like, "Where you gonna go? We own all the patents.
Yeah.
And by the way, in addition to paying us 5% of the phones, I think you should pay us to license these patents too." And all the customers go, "What?" And Qualcomm goes, "Where else are you gonna go?"
So you make them sound so evil.
I mean, they did invent it all, so they do have a right to monetize it. But
Apple did, and the DOJ did, not the FTC sued them for antitrust.